This week on the other side, new research shockingly suggests that the modelling upon which all of our climate change assumptions and policy is made could be fundamentally statistically flawed and worthless. We will meet the Adelaide academic and expert on forecasting who authored that study. Does the Movember charity need a bit of a shave? Men's rights activist Bettina Arndt will join me to discuss the wave of online criticism of that organisation. We'll try to get to the bottom of the claims of ideological bias and lack of transparency. And the Free Speech Union has a win against the eSAFETY Commissioner. Things haven't been going well for the E-Karens lately. The union's founder will join us, and he's got some thoughts too on that very serious Giggle versus Tickle case that's been back in the news of late. All that and more this week, because it's time you got the other side of the story. G'day Newcastle City, g'day Gold Coast City, g'day Australia. This is episode 422 of The Other Side for the week commencing Friday, August 15, 2025. I'm Damien Curry. The Other Side is your deep dive on the important issues that matter in Australia and that affect us from around the world from a different perspective. A new show drops every Friday night at 7 p.m. and clips from our Friday night shows drop throughout the following week, most nights at around 7 o'clock. So you can watch any way you like. You can watch the whole show, you can watch it in the clip segment form. If you're watching on YouTube, please do click the subscribe button and the notification bell beside it so you don't miss anything. And if you do like what you see, please do support us. We are a voluntarily viewer-supported show, and we really do need your help to keep going. Just click the join button beside the subscribe button on YouTube, or if you prefer, you can head over to our website and join the exclusive side for less than the price of one flat white per month. The QR code at the bottom of the screen will take you there, or just type in othersidetv.com.au. But you've got to laugh sometimes, because if you don't laugh, you will cry. Our country is just a crack up, honestly. Only in Australia could you get people heading off to a productivity roundtable, a blab fest on how the country can overcome its great productivity problem, with the brilliant idea that to improve productivity, we should actually work 4 days a week instead of 5. It's astounding. It's hilarious. I wonder what people in other countries would make of this if they actually knew what we get up to down here. The union movement's national body, the ACTU, has decided to demolish any credibility that the union movement has left and is actually going to propose, with a straight face, with no sense of irony whatsoever, that the way to improve our nation's productivity is for everyone to work 20% less. Lunatic academics on TV are banging on about how a 4-day week will actually make people more productive. Well, it might, a bit, per hour that they actually work, because they'll be better rested, unless they're not. Maybe healthier too, unless they're not. But how about proposing a 40-hour week in 4 days instead of a 38-hour week in 5 days as one option? Would they ever think of that? Oh, no. Well, here's a novel idea. How about butting out altogether and letting employers and employees decide, with maximum flexibility, within reason, of course, we do need some minimum standards to prevent exploitation, what the union movement used to stand for. But how about letting individuals generally and individual businesses generally do their own contracts? Oh, no. The union movement of Australia would never have that. The ACTU also wants industries where a 4-day week wouldn't work to be given more time off too, shorter days and more holidays. They're actually talking about a 30 to 32-hour week. How on earth this all ties into increasing productivity is absolutely beyond me. Call me nuts. And by some miracle of left-wing economics, which is about as grounded in reality as a transgender unicorn at a Scientology meeting, all of this must be done with zero loss of pay. Back here in the real world, we understand that until Australia gets its declining productivity up, inflation won't come down, and wages will be stuck right where they are in real terms, or even go backwards. But this is the level of the thinking of the left, folks. Don't bother trying to reason with them. They'll just dismiss you as a right-wing nut job and shut down the conversation, because they're not terribly sharp, unfortunately. And they totally run our country now. The most left-wing Labor government we've ever had, with a huge majority in the lower house and a Labor-Green combined majority in the Senate. There's no need to even ask us right-wing nutjobs anymore what we think. They're free to wreck the joint. Elbow and Jimbo's little roundtable this week is going to be a barrel of laughs. Meanwhile, wages are rising in nominal terms, if not in reality, apparently. Annual wage growth was 3.4% in the 12 months to June, according to data released Wednesday by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. It's a little bit stronger than expected by the experts, but no big change on the recent numbers. And by the way, it'd be great if the inflation rate was actually what they say it is at around 2.1% and didn't feel like it actually hasn't moved from the 2022 peak of 7.8%. It's a bit like one of those weather forecasts, 5 degrees today, but feels like -10 because of the wind chill factor. The Reserve Bank is accepting the inflation data now, though. I guess they wouldn't dare not lower interest rates this time around. They dropped the 3.85% base rate down to 3.6% this week, something that they would not do if they didn't think that inflation was actually getting under control a bit now. But it's funny because, as we reported last month, after the RBA held rates steady and didn't drop them as expected, the Reserve Bank boss, Michelle Bullock, she dropped a bit of a bombshell that, of course, the mainstream broadcast media all missed. She said then that some members of the board, the RBA board, did not have any confidence in how we measure inflation in this country.
Reasonable people can differ in their interpretations of data. And I think there was a couple of things. One was the labour market data and another was the monthly CPI data. And a lot of people focused on the headline CPI number at 2.1%, but we don't think inflation in a sustainable way is that low. We think it's higher. So our interpretation of the data, I think, was a bit different. And opportunities like this, for me, to communicate that, I think is very helpful.
Yeah, she really said that. We don't think inflation was that low. We think it was higher. She was answering a question about why some of the RBA board members voted for a rate cut while the majority voted against it last month. And she said that, what roughly translates into our CPI data isn't reliable. That's what she said, pretty much. So why don't we fix it? Mortgage interest rates isn't even in the basket of goods used to measure inflation. Many critics say that electricity and gas, health costs, insurance, and education costs are also heavily underweighted in that inflation measure basket of goods. The Bureau of Statistics is the organisation responsible for putting the basket of goods together. They re-weight it once every year. Something is just not right now. The basket of goods is a basket case. Meanwhile, Elbow's attention seems to be elsewhere this week.
Breaking into programming now to take you to a live press conference with the Prime Minister speaking in Canberra.
September, Australia will recognise the state of Palestine. Australia will recognise the right of the Palestinian people to a state of their own, predicated on the commitments Australia has received from the Palestinian Authority.
Channel 9 breaking into programming early this week to bring us the news that Australia will recognise a Palestinian state formally at the UN General Assembly meeting next month. Something the Palestinians have wanted for years, all their dreams coming true, as a nice reward for their excellent military strategy that they executed on October the 7th, 2023. Terrorism pays off, kids. So does hiding behind your own civilians in a war and letting your people suffer and die for your own political control. Hamas praised Anthony Albanese for this fantastic action. And our opposition leader, Susan Lee, got this one right. Hooray. She told the ABC that the coalition would never have made a decision like this.
We would never have made this decision. To get ahead of a proper peace process is against the interests of the Palestinian people, who deserve a strong, committed, dedicated leadership that cares about their welfare and cares about their future. It makes no sense to recognise a Palestinian state when you have terrorists on the border of Israel who want to see Israel destroyed.
Yeah, there is that tiny little point. 3/4 of the 193 member states of the UN recognise Palestinian statehood, but lots of serious ones don't, like the United States, Japan, Germany, Korea, New Zealand, Singapore, Taiwan. But France and the UK and Canada have all decided to reward the Palestinian leadership at this interesting time in their history if they agree to ensure that Hamas won't be in the new government and that there will be elections. The Israeli Prime Minister was just thrilled about the wise move of Albanese and Wong.
Those who say that Israel has a right to defend itself are also saying, but don't exercise that right. When we do what any country would do faced with this genocidal terrorist organization that has performed the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, I think we're actually applying force judiciously, and they know it. They know what they would do if right next to Melbourne or right next to Sydney, you had this horrific attacks. I think you would do it, at least what we're doing, probably maybe not as efficiently and as precisely as we're doing it. We've lost quite a few soldiers in that effort. The second thing you ask is Palestinian state. Well, the assumption, the prevailing assumption in this is that the problem that we have with the Palestinians is the absence of a Palestinian state. And if they were given a Palestinian state, they would stop the efforts to destroy the Jewish state. But the Palestinians were offered a state many times, including in the partition resolution, and they turned it down. They were offered statehood by my predecessors with lavish concessions. They turned it down because the Palestinians are not about creating a state, they're about destroying a state. To have European countries and Australia march into that rabbit hole, just like that, fall right into it, and buy this canard is disappointing, and I think it's actually shameful. But it's not going to change our position. Again, we will not commit national suicide.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu there. The United States was also thrilled by Prime Minister Albanese's announcement. Sky News reported that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio told US ABC Radio that the Australian action is symbolic and all about domestic Australian politics and is essentially meaningless.
Yeah, and first of all, it's largely meaningless, right? It's symbolic, and they're doing it primarily for one reason, and that is their internal politics, their domestic politics. Yeah, the truth of the matter is that the future of that region is not going to be decided by some UN resolution. It's not going to be decided by some press release by a prime minister or a president from some country. It's going to be decided on the ground. In fact, but all these statements are meaningless. Like they're not going to change anything.
Good God, don't tell Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong that. They think they're very important people on the world stage. We wouldn't want to burst their bubble. What was really cute was later in the week when people started to dig a bit and ask the two leaders exactly how all of this two-state solution stuff was going to work. As you probably know, there are two parts of Palestine. You've got the orange bit on the left there, which is Gaza, and the orange bit on the right, which is the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority runs the West Bank, and Hamas runs Gaza. You see, Hamas won the January 2006 Palestinian elections, beating out Fatah, the dominant party of the Palestinian Authority. And as is the usual way in the Middle East, this led to a calm and sensible conversation and gentlemanly agreement. Of course it didn't. It escalated into a violent power struggle right away. There was a week of intense fighting in June 2007, known as the Battle of Gaza, after which Hamas had expelled Fatah security forces and assumed complete authority over Gaza, leaving the Palestinian Authority in control only of the West Bank. And this state we are recognising next month, well, it kind of divided into two sides who happen to hate each other. But the general consensus seems to be that the countries newly recognising Palestine as a state will hope that the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, this bloke, a long-time top guy in Fatah who was trained by PLO head Yasser Arafat back in the day, will suddenly become a really good guy. Now, he hasn't held elections in the West Bank for 20 years, but he's promised Elbow he will have an election. So as far as I'm concerned, that's as good as gold. No worries, mate. As for Gaza, well, Hamas will no doubt suddenly just hand back the hostages and surrender, right? And then the people will no doubt be thrilled to have Hamas gone and the Palestinian Authority back in control. And they'll all stop calling for the end of Israel to exist. And as a state or a country in its own right. And everyone will live happily ever after. They might even have a productivity roundtable. Jim Chalmers could pop over there and run it. That'd be fun. And the people of Gaza will be happy because the Gazans hate Hamas, right? I mean, they voted them in 2006 only because they had no choice. Well, actually, maybe not, according to a new poll by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. It's a real outfit, reliable studies based in the West Bank, supported by Dutch experts. It's been doing polls for ages and has been widely reported on around the world. The Australian reports that the satisfaction rating of Hamas among all Palestinians, in green there on the left, is 57%. Support for Hamas among Gazans is a little lower now, understandably, still on the left there in blue at 43%. It used to be much higher before the war, and it seems that the people of the West Bank, governed by the Palestinian Authority, would prefer Hamas a lot compared to how much they like Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and Mahmoud Abbas, which are the other three columns. So do you get the picture? Hamas is popular among the people still. This isn't good news for a future of peace. And check this out. This is how many Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank reckon the October 7 attacks were a great idea. It was still at 67% just over a year ago. Now it's down to 50%. So I guess Israel can rest easy now. No reason that a friendly, peaceful two-state solution can't work. Bibi, you warmonger, you. If you like The Other Side, one of the best ways you can support us is by signing up for the products of our sponsors. And one of our best sponsors is PIA VPN, the virtual private network that stops people spying on your internet activity. It'll keep you and your family truly safe from the prying eyes of big governments and corporations without slowing down your internet speeds. And you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. You can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and you'll get the discount. And you'll get more info on those special deals if you check it out. That's piavpn.com/otherside. Our kids are being made anxious with tales of the end of the world. Our electricity bills are soaring, and Australia is putting its economy and its national security at risk, all because of climate change science and modelling. So you'd really want to make sure that the models were right? That we weren't overreacting to a risk that is not as big as it seems, especially given how much money is involved in building the new energy industries and how much potential might exist for self-interest and financial gain to be driving the political agenda. My next guest is an academic from the University of South Australia who's an expert on modelling and statistical analysis. He wrote an academic paper with a European colleague that was published earlier this year in the peer-reviewed journal Science of Climate Change. The study has caused a stir because it challenges the validity and reliability of the climate models that are used by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. This is important because these are the projections that underpin the Paris Climate Agreement and the adoption of net zero policies. Dr. Keston Green is the academic from University of South Australia who co-authored the study, and he joins me now. Dr. Green, thanks for your time. You wrote this paper with astrophysicist Dr. Willie Soon of the Institute of Earth Physics and Space Science. What was the main finding?
Well, the main finding was a little bit different from what you suggested in your introduction, in the sense that we're not talking about climate science when we talk about the IPCC's forecasts. Our testing of using the scientific method, the testing of alternative hypotheses, really put a spotlight on the IPCC modelling and highlighted that it was not the result of a scientific process at all. And what we found was that when we tested using the tool of predictive validity, or against the criterion of predictive validity, how good are the models at making forecasts or the hypothesis of making forecasts about data that wasn't used to estimate those models, the IPCC models fell over completely. They were making errors of up to 22 degrees Celsius.
What?
And the scientific method requires testing against alternatives.
So your point is it's not even science, right? It's not even science that we're dealing with.
It's not even science, because they were not testing alternative hypotheses. They were creating their own, or have been creating their own, data on the human activity. They've been creating their own data on temperatures, and then they say, well, our human factor, CO2, our variable, that is driving climate, and the sun isn't. And they chose a particular measure of solar activity in their testing to reject the role of sun.
So where you used
we tested the alternatives, where we alternative measures of solar activity, we found, well, in fact, solar activity is very predictive of what future temperatures will be.
So just to pick up on that, the models that the IPCC is using to measure both the carbon dioxide and the solar influence on temperature produced forecast errors as large as 4 degrees Celsius in forecasting northern hemisphere land temperatures and 20 degrees Celsius in forecasting rural temperatures. But the models that were independent for the solar influence was much less than 1 degree Celsius in forecasting temperatures. So for both rural and all land temperatures. So basically what you found was that the solar is very good for the forecasting. It looks like solar has the highest connection to temperature, and the models that the IPCC are using for both solar and for CO2 are way off. Is that right?
Yeah, way off. They're way off. Well, errors of 22 degrees Celsius. Well, what's a comparison? And when in science we want to compare the simplest reasonable model, and the one that we tested against was median average temperatures. Let's say next year and 100 years into the future is going to be the same as the average or median of the historical temperatures. Well, when you forecast that, you're making errors of less than a degree. So that performs extremely well. So when you come along and add this new variable anthropogenic and say, well, let's say that humans are causing climate change, and it makes errors of 22 degrees Celsius, there's something desperately wrong about their testing and their creation of variables.
Well, so it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, if it's so, you're just before we move on to the question of why this isn't obvious to everybody, you've basically found there that it's got more to do with the sun than it's got to do with anything man-made, right? That's the first thing.
Yes.
If there is a big change forecast anyway. So in terms of just the sun's impact, how bad are things going to get, do you think?
Well, the thing about the sun and volcanic eruptions, which also have an effect on temperatures, is they're difficult to predict.
And we certainly can't control them with net zero programs.
Well, that's right. So if solar activity were to go down, then we'd be looking at cooler temperatures. We've had ice ages before. They have drastically much worse effects on life on Earth than warmer temperatures. So there could be a big volcanic eruption next year, which would cool the planet dramatically, and then again result in serious losses through crops and so on. So the natural variables aren't predictable. And even if they were right on CO2 being an influence, which we I think clearly demonstrate that they're not. Any influence from that could be grossly outweighed by changes in solar irradiance or volcanic eruptions.
So let's have a look at the how you wrote it in the report. We'll just put that on the screen now. Our findings suggest that IPCC modelling fails to support the hypothesis that human carbon dioxide emissions have a meaningful impact on global temperatures. Unpredictable and uncontrollable variations in radiation from the sun and volcanic eruptions will continue to determine changes in the Earth's climate. Policies that deny that reality cannot avoid imposing great costs on the many to the benefit of the very few. Which brings me to the question, how's your paper been received since it was published in May?
Well, it's been received by you, Damien. Thank you. And I have done some podcast interviews, before. Not, should we say, with the mainstream of the media, if you'd like. So this is a very powerful, lobby, the UN, the IPCC, and the people who have. The small number of people who've got a lot at stake, and the journalists who've completely bought into this scary narrative and are scaring our children and everyone else with this terrible story that is not based on science at all. So taking a step back, it was very hard to get the paper published in the journals that should have been publishing it. Which is very disappointing, and the usual reaction from the scientific community to things that go against the
mainstream
narrative, the mainstream, is to suppress and ignore. So I'm very grateful for any opportunity to get this message out there.
All right. Well, you're going to be speaking. You're coming all the way from Adelaide to Brisbane. You're going to be speaking at a lunchtime function on Tuesday. Which people can get tickets for by going to aip.asn.au. So if you want to see Dr. Keston Green discussing this and have a chat with him, get along to that luncheon in Brisbane on Tuesday. aip.asn.au. The Australian Institute for Progress is hosting Dr. Green. Dr. Green, thank you very, very much. You've got a book out called The Scientific Method, A Guide to Finding Useful Knowledge, which people can also pick up as well. But thank you very, very much for joining us on The Other Side today, and we hope to have you back on sometime soon.
The Other Side with Damien Coorey is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed and diving deep on the issues that matter most in around an hour. So you don't miss a thing. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel at Other Side Oz by clicking the button and the bell below the picture frame. And follow us on X now at Other Side Oz. That's AUS at Other Side Oz. It's free. This is The Other Side.
It was a great idea, a charity started by a couple of Aussie blokes who persuaded men to grow moustaches to support the Prostate Cancer Foundation. 20 years later, Movember has grown from that small group of men sporting hairy upper lips to become the major male health charity in the world. But our regular Men's Issues contributor Bettina Arndt writes that many people don't realise Movember is actually now a quite large multinational enterprise run by a feminist and supported by mainly female staff. And Bettina alleges that Movember is increasingly committed to diverting men's health dollars away from real male health concerns towards woke projects promoting anti-male ideology. And she joins me now. Bettina, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Nice to be here, Damien. Thank you.
Movember was such a great idea, and it's such a loved traditional charity meme. Doesn't it do a lot of good for men's health?
Yeah, look, this is the thing. All these guys out there thinking they're doing their bit to help other men, and all that, their families and so on supporting them. You'd like to think it was doing a lot of good for men, but if you look at the original goal of helping prostate cancer and then testicular cancer, they're only now spending 7% of their total earnings, which is 1.1 billion over the last 20 years. And now it's only 7% going to that original prostate cancer research.
Wow.
And that, there's been a massive drop off in what people think they're spending their money on.
Last year, Movember, you said in your article last year that Movember formed an alliance with UN Women, an organisation of the UN, and that the CEO, Michelle Terry, became one of 4 global champions who was sort of praised at the He for She Summit, which is a thing designed to mobilise the world for gender equality, mainly for women. And she also made a series of commitments to UN Women, including that Movember would promote healthy masculinities. This does sound a little bit like they're more concerned about women's issues now than men's issues, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The UN Women is an appalling organisation, really anti-male feminist organisation that's endlessly promoting pro-women, pro-feminist ideology and denigrating men in various ways. And for the head of this huge men's organisation to sign up to this really says it all. I mean, she's interested in ideology. When they talk about healthy masculinities, this means denigrating traditional masculine virtues, if you like, shaming men, shaming boys in schools, teaching boys to be ashamed of being male. And, it's a long way removed from what people think they're fundraising for.
Let's have a look at this chart. I think it's quite interesting on their expenditure over the years from 2019 to 2023. And you can see the grey line there that's gone way up. That grey line is mental health and suicide protection, which sounds like it is important and is something that they should be spending on. But you have a look at the blue line, which is prostate and testicular cancer research, which is the original thing, and it's gone significantly down. Yeah. And the red line is prostate and testicular cancer outcomes. And then we see men's health programs and promotions, and the yellow line going up as well. So the grey and the yellow one are kind of more the psychological side of things, which is where I guess a lot of that ideology comes in, right, in those softer areas of health.
I mean, one of their recent projects is supporting homosexual fathers. Now, it's a worthy cause, but I doubt whether many of the men fundraising would think that's a priority for them. I mean, I think most people are thinking of helping ordinary blokes where there's a real health crisis, and suicide prevention is certainly, I suppose, the major component we should be looking at there. So, I mean, we were applauding when we noticed that this is where Movember is putting a lot of their money. But when you dig in and look at how they're spending that money, that's where you get concerned.
They've got a bit of a weird take on suicide prevention too, right? I mean, it's all about that traditional feminist line of men need to get in touch with their feelings more. There's no nothing on the sort of more stoic side of psychology, really that much.
Their biggest program, one of the biggest programs they're funding is called the Way Back Suicide Project, where the money goes, 60% of the money goes to women. Because this project is all about helping people who've attempted suicide, and they're trying to stop them, trying it again, obviously. And women tend to do that more than men. So they're quite happy to give 60% of this big hunk of their suicide money to women.
Sorry, so it just goes to the Way Back program without any allocation specifically to men. And of course, tragically, we know men are more successful when they attempt suicide, so there wouldn't be that much there's more prevention on the female side.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Nothing wrong with any of this stuff, of course. We're not suggesting that. We're just saying that that's probably not what people think the money's going to when they actually make the donation to Movember. I want to get to your...
Sorry, David, what I was going to say is, I mean, you'd think you'd then turn around and think, well, why are men killing themselves? Ask the hard questions. And the evidence is there. I mean, we have... On our official data, the Bureau of Statistics data has coroner's reports showing the major cause of suicide, particularly for this group of family men, 25 to 44. Key group of men is family breakup, is relationship breakdown, and all the costs and the stresses associated with that.
Yeah. And
that is what the feminists, and that's what this Movember and all these big organisations are desperate to ignore. our national suicide prevention policies won't address this issue of what is killing men and the fact that relationship breakup, battles in the family court, false allegations, being denied their children, they are key issues and no one wants to deal with it. And Movember has never addressed any of that publicly. They won't go near there. And I think that's why they're diverting all their funding in this other direction. I mean, seeing it as a mental health problem, for instance, rather than a response to situational distress.
Yeah, this is a massive point because there's this tendency to think, oh, you know, male suicide is a result of depression, men not being in touch with their feelings, blah, blah, blah. It's actually primarily situational. It's an astounding thing. I want to get to your recent interview with George. George is a UK campaigner, and I want people to watch that interview after the show. It's a great interview. He's a UK campaigner. He's a professional digital content creator in the ad industry in the UK, and he's a men's health activist. He posts under the name The Tin Men online. He's campaigning for more transparency from the Movember organisation. Let's take a look at a clip from your interview with him and some of George's work.
I think people struggle to understand that Movember is an actual organisation. People know Movember primarily as the meme, like Movember. You grow a moustache on November, that's it, you raise money. But beyond that, it is actually an enormous NGO, a huge men's health charity, the biggest of its kind anywhere in the world. It's huge. I can't overemphasize how big it is. It's not just a meme. And yeah, I think they've been capitalising on the enormous success of that meme, that shareability of the moustache. It's incredible. But behind that is a charity that I agree started off well, but has increasingly gone off the rails over maybe the past 5 or so years, maybe longer. And now they're expanding. So obviously they're an Australian charity, but they're now all over the world. They're in Europe, the UK, Canada, America, most of all. And I've been certainly critical of the UK arm for many reasons. 3, most of all, firstly, is that they're not supporting the Violence Against Men and Boys bill. So in the UK, there was no dedicated strategy for protecting male victims of abuse. Now there's a bill called the Violence Against Men and Boys Act, which will change that. Movember are not supporting that bill. That's the first issue. The second issue is the amount of money they have. I mentioned it. They have about £54 million in the bank in the UK. Similar amount in Australia, but in the UK they're not spending this money. Their money's coming in from the donors, and it's not getting spent. It's going up and up and up and up and up like a big mountain of cash, and that's a problem. Like if you're a charity, that money has to be going out. The whole point of you getting that money is not to hold on to it; it's to spend it on men. Like that, people donate money for men. And the third criticism I've levelled at them is that a complete lack of appropriate governance. So, like all charities, we have trustees at the top. A trustee is there to ensure the money is properly spent on the country it's in, but none of Movember UK's trustees are British or even living in Europe. They're all Australian or American. So it's like we've got 9 trustees of this enormous men's health charity in the UK. All of the trustees are based abroad.
Now, to be absolutely clear, we are not suggesting any illegality here. This is just fair criticism about why the money isn't being deployed and what it is being deployed on when it is being spent. The ideological approach and about systems of governance. Movember are allowed to raise as much money as they can. They can spend the money on whatever they want, but people do, I think, Bettina, have a right to know where it's going. And that's all we're really doing here is talking about that. Yeah, I mean, George does some amazing work. There was another interesting observation in your interview with him. He's done a lot of meta research, right, showing that domestic violence is not a gendered issue. Mm-hmm. It's important stuff. So I might just play another bit of that interview as well, Bettina, on that. Let's just have a listen to that.
I looked at like the research by Murray Strauss, who I'm sure you know was the greatest living expert in family violence research. He presented 200 studies that showed categorically that men and women abuse each other at equal rates.
Yep.
So I had an analysis of 200 studies. I had it presented by the greatest expert that's ever lived in the field. And I was like, well, this is great. All it needs is someone like me to put these cards down on the table. This is a winning hand. And then I'd put the hand down and it would lose every time. And then I'd have Erin Pitsey come along. Again, like the pioneer of the domestic violence movement, set up the biggest and first, oldest, largest refuge in the world for women. She would say the same. I'd be like, well, here's my second hand, another set of aces. and it would lose. And then for many years, I've been putting down hundreds, if not thousands of studies. The PASC, for example, which is the biggest database on family violence anywhere in the world, 1,700 studies. Again, doesn't get bigger than that. It's the biggest database. It says it's not gendered. I put it down and I lose again. So that's...
Sorry, George. When you say you lose, what happens?
Oh, people don't care. People don't care. You know, someone will be, oh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Wow. But I would be like, okay, I'm not interested in you being interested. I want you to be annoyed. Like, we're talking about millions and millions of men not being helped, often turning to things like suicide. And this is beyond being interesting. This is outrageous.
Yeah, Bettina, I didn't know that domestic violence is not gendered. I mean, it really is quite even. I knew it was a lot more even than we're told, but it is actually globally quite even, right?
Absolutely. We've been seeing this for nearly 50 years, research showing that, which is absolutely suppressed in our culture. They don't want to talk about it. And also, Movember won't talk about it. And why does Movember give over $3 million to the program to end violence against women? I mean, that makes no sense when they won't acknowledge male victims. They do nothing to give money to men who want to escape violent homes. I think people need to think locally and support local charities that are actually helping men rather than this global industry, which is very anti-male in its goals.
Okay, great to talk to you as always, Bettina. Thanks very much for joining us on the show again, and we hope to see you again pretty soon.
Thanks, Damien.
Keep up the great work as you always do. Bettina Arndt there. Did you know that with a virtual private network or VPN on your computer, tablet or phone, you can log into your favourite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages? And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there, as a viewer of The Other Side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/otherside. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep The Other Side going and growing. The eSAFETY Commission, affectionately nicknamed the E-Karen's Office by free speech activists, has had yet another legal loss this year. That's 3 losses and only 1 win, I think. It was defeated in the Billboard Chris case that we talked about on the show previously, and it backed down in its own action in the federal court against X and Elon Musk. This time, the Administrative Review Tribunal has ruled against the Commission in an action brought by the Free Speech Union of Australia. This win should have got much more media coverage than it did, so we're going to bring it to you. The Free Speech Union is doing great work to protect free speech in this country by really holding this very unpopular government commission to account in a way that neither the government nor the opposition seem to be prepared to do. I really think it's worth supporting the FSU's work. You can find them by just searching up Free Speech Union Australia. As we know, the eSAFETY Commission attempts to police online content by using its powers against social media companies to put pressure on them to remove the stuff that they don't like. They don't seem to ever want to talk about the free speech implications of that power they wield. They see themselves as keeping us all safe and keeping the kids safe. And our major political parties, both of them, seem to also think that there's nothing to worry about. I mean, there's no way these powers impose massive fines on social media companies could in any way ever lead to anything bad happening, right? But people who care and understand how precious and delicate free speech actually is in the world and want to protect it in Australia, they see things otherwise. Even the threat hanging over a social media company's head of a massive fine from a troublesome government regulator in a small country down under can cause them to tweak their algorithms ever so slightly in ways that mean that if we, on this show, for example, talk about certain subjects that the government doesn't like, or that the social media companies even think might upset the government ever so slightly, then our videos will be throttled or demonetized or even banned. And if that happens enough times, our whole channels can be banned and years of hard work goes down the drain with zero legal recourse. YouTube doesn't owe me any access to their platform. So then we have to start self-censoring, and the meddling bureaucrats in the eSAFETY Commission have already won the political game before it even starts. They don't have to directly come after us. The social media companies will do their dirty work for them so that they don't come after them. That's really why I think the Labor government and the Liberal Party are both very happy for the e-Karens to remain. Anyway, joining me from Melbourne to discuss all of this and the implications of the latest ruling against eSAFETY is Ruben Kirkin, the founder and director of the Free Speech Union of Australia. Ruben, thanks for joining us on the other side. This is a very technical case, but in simple terms, just take us through it. Start at the beginning. You filed this case against the commissioner. Why was that? Had she made a ruling against you? Or?
No, we decided we wanted to test her scheme from the point of view of being a complainant. And this is like the whole rationale of her scheme, right? It's protecting the vulnerable. It's protecting, apparently, people who've been subject to the worst kind of abuse. And the eSAFETY Commissioner decided to go to Washington, D.C. on your money, on taxpayers' money, probably on a business class flight, and start spreading conspiracy theories about the Free Speech Union of Australia in some sort of weird rant about our legal cases. And apparently we were some sort of front group for Elon Musk. I wish we were, but unfortunately...
Yeah, you'd have a lot more... I was just saying, I get that all the time, right? It's like, if you say anything positive about Israel, 500 people will put a quote in saying that I'm paid for by the Jewish lobby. If I defend the gas industry, it's like, oh no, you're paid for by the gas lobby. It's like, no, all of our opinions are our own. You've got your positions on things and you are not funded by Elon Musk, sadly. But she was saying that you were. And I think it's kind of clever of you, therefore, to use her own power and rules and regulations against her, right? You turned it around on her. I just want to play the video clip from Milk Bar TV. Nathan Livingston did a great job of just clipping this recently on Twitter. Let's just have a look at this clip of the eSAFETY Commissioner attacking the Free Speech Union of Australia. Play that one, John.
There are front groups. One is called the Free Speech Union of Australia, and they've run a campaign to increase the number of FOIs by 3,000%. And they're very open about, let's just tie them up in knots.
Okay, tie them up in knots. Are you trying to tie her up in knots?
No, she does that well enough herself already. What happened was last year, we found out from a federal court filing that she'd been hoovering up everyone's social media data who'd criticised her. So we made a simple web form so people could find out if she was actually indeed spying on people. And that would take only 5 minutes to respond to if she wasn't. The problem was that she was actually keeping ridiculous amounts of records on people. There's one Australian lawyer who she had 14,000 pages on. And the eSAFETY Commissioner says, we've got so much information, it's too much work to give it to you. We had a similar response. It was 4,000 pages they had in this, and it's like, why? Why are you keeping all this information? So that is how this came about. It wasn't to do a denial of service attack on our office using freedom of information requests.
So
it was
surprise, surprise. She can't be. That office can't be trusted. That they are doing these things. Then when you complained about those comments that she made, you used her regulations to complain in the Administrative Review Tribunal that what she said there was a form of online abuse of you. You then asked her, first of all, she said the ruling was that it wasn't abuse, right? And then you asked her to provide the reasons in writing for why she made the decision it wasn't abuse, and they refused. And that's why you took the action. Is that right?
Yes, that's how you go to the tribunal. So the first step is you have to complain to her office under the cyber abuse scheme. And if she says no, what she's supposed to do is tell you about your appeal rights. Now, she never does. So these 10,000 people who make complaints, most of them are abuse victims, most of them being completely fobbed off. She actually processes very few complaints. It tends to be the pronoun cases, the political cases that seem to end up with notices of some kind being issued. But she also says in those cases, which is a different story, that they're not notices either. So according to her, she never actually makes a decision, or nearly never makes a decision. I think she makes a decision about 20 times a year, something like that. And apparently only the decisions she makes 20 times, but those 20 decisions can be appealed, according to her, which the tribunal, again, was very unimpressed by. This is not the first time.
I want to get to the tribunal's findings. Before we do that, though, it's taxpayers, right, that have got to foot the bill for all of this legal back and forth. I want to just show this quick tender notice that was online when they were trying to hire a lawyer. They can put that up now, John. $20,000 of taxpayers' money. You can see there. This was the contract that they were tendering out for legal services to challenge advice and representation for Kirkham and in the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. So Kirkham is you. This is the legal money that they were putting out to or the tender they were putting out to get a lawyer to help them. So again, taxpayers' money going into this. I might say well spent in this case, because let's have a look now at the ruling from the Deputy President, Britton Jones, who said that eSAFETY did refuse to give a removal notice. She had said that she hadn't refused. eSAFETY must provide the reasons for doing so within 20 days. She said that they didn't have to provide the reasons. The Deputy President also said that eSAFETY's position would be a very odd result. So the point of view they had and what they were saying would be very odd, and it would deny complainants' rights. That was a pretty severe slapdown. And also, the Deputy President said that eSAFETY's case had an air of artificiality and impracticality about it. So that's a pretty strongly worded ruling against the eSAFETY Commission there from the Administrative Review Tribunal. Ruben, tell us a little bit more about that air of artificiality and impracticality line.
Well, that was about the process she used to process complaints. Apparently, she was doing it in two stages. The first was whether she would consider it met a threshold of cyber abuse. And the second was, if it was cyber abuse, whether or not she should remove it. Apparently, because if she decided something wasn't cyber abuse, then she had no duty to act. And of course, whenever she didn't want to act, she decided it wasn't cyber abuse. Therefore, you could never appeal her decision to the tribunal. That was, in theory, how she was working. Now, of course, in practice, all they're doing is going, oh, I think this should be taken down. Can we find a way to take it down? If we can't find a legal way to do it, we'll send an informal notice. And apparently she only finds a legal basis to take things down, like for a tiny fraction of the adult cyber abuse complaints that are made. The other time she thinks it should be taken down if it's got the wrong political content, for example, if it misgenders someone, apparently. That's very important to people in her office, and they will send these informal notices, which are now no more than, dear tech company, this may be against your terms of service. Please consider taking this down. And there was another decision called Baumgarten, which caused her to rewrite these notices. So they are basically completely ineffectual, which she's also appealing to the federal court, I believe she's appealing with another bunch of expensive lawyers. We haven't seen the tender notice for that.
All right. Well, look, I mean, I think the work you're doing is fantastic. The Free Speech Union of Australia, people can get onto it and support you. I'm sure the Administrative Review Tribunal isn't happy with the mockery that the eSAFETY Commission seems to be making of their approach to things, it would appear. By the way, the Administrative Review Tribunal is relatively new. It was launched in October last year, and it replaces the old Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which was criticised for political appointments and inconsistency, and the government turned it into the Administrative Review Tribunal to improve its independence, transparency and timeliness, and it seems to be doing a good job at the moment. You've got a petition running, Ruben, as well. EndESAFETY.au. EndESAFETY.au. People can go on there. They can sign your petition, and that will help out as well. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us. I want you to stick around because I want to talk to you in a moment about the Giggle versus Tickle case, which I think is pretty important. So we'll be back with Ruben Kirkham in just a moment.
The Other Side with Damien Coorey is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed and diving deep on the issues that matter most in around an hour. so you don't miss a thing. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel at Other Side Oz by clicking the button and the bell below the picture frame. And follow us on X now at Other Side Oz. That's AUS at Other Side Oz. It's free. This is The Other Side.
One of the most serious legal cases in our nation's history was before the courts last week, and what's much more disturbing than the fact that this case is even happening is the appalling lack of coverage that it's been getting, especially from newspapers like the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, or your very expensive ABC that every taxpayer is forced to pay for, whether we watch or listen to it or not. As we reported last week, whether or not our country is going to fall further across the line of legally forcing speech, an Orwellian concept of the most horrific kind, is central to this case. Your right to call a biological man who presents as a trans woman a man, or to use the she, her pronouns or other preferred pronouns or not, rests on the outcome of this case. You could be forced to call a trans woman she, even if you don't want to. Worse than that, you can be fined for calling them he. Now just stop and let that sink in for a moment. Certainly you could lose your job for not complying, at least. The Australian case has caught the attention of J.K. Rowling, who tweeted her support for the businesswoman who's at the heart of this whole thing. The case is, somewhat amusingly, called the Giggle versus Tickle case because it involves the complaint by a transgender woman named Roxanne Tickle against an app called Giggle for Girls, created and run by a previous guest on this show, Sal Grover. But this case is absolutely no joke. In August last year, Sal Grover lost the original discrimination case that was brought by Tickle for not allowing her to join the app because it was for women only. And that was an example of the forced speech, by the way. I am now bound to say her there. Justice Bromwich found that Tickle was indirectly discriminated against and awarded her $10,000 in damages plus legal costs. But that wasn't good enough for Roxanne Tickle. She appealed because she wanted the court to also find direct discrimination, not just indirect, and to award substantially higher damages. She originally was seeking around $200,000. Now I think she's seeking $40,000. Sal Grover and Giggle for Girls then filed a cross appeal, arguing that the original ruling should be completely overturned and that excluding trans women from the app was a lawful special measure under Section 7D of the Australian Sex Discrimination Act, and that the judge erred in his definition of woman and his definition of sex. That is why this case is so very important. So the full federal court hearing last week was dealing with both of those appeals at the same time. My special guest on the show this week is Reuben Kirkin, the founder and director of the Free Speech Union of Australia. Reuben, the most troubling thing about this case is it goes beyond the usual free speech argument, as in the famous case in Canada that shot Jordan Peterson to fame about a decade ago, showed everybody. This is what Peterson referred to as forced speech, right?
Well, it's worse than that. All Sal Grover did was set up a business for basically free discussion amongst biological women who wanted to discuss certain sensitive topics that they couldn't really do with men. So this whole topic of conversation is shut down. It's not just compelled speech, because, I mean, really, are they going to have an intimate discussion with a bunch of men in there, even if those men say that they are women? It's not really going to fly, is it? So poor Sal Grover's had to spend millions on this and raise millions, and it basically has made it impossible for her to run a business. So if you apparently upset some trans activist who doesn't even want to really use your platform, and that, by the way, was a finding of the court, that Tickle never actually really wanted to use the platform, which is perhaps unsurprising, given the nature of the platform. Apparently even that was a basis to allow this litigation to go forward. It should never have been allowed to proceed. It is using discrimination law as a weapon rather than to protect genuinely vulnerable people. And there are people who are subject to genuine discrimination who actually do need these protections. And it brings really important protections into disrepute. So someone can feel special by having the right alliteration of their name or something, or the right pronouns, at least track of whatever it is, but they'll keep adding to it, no doubt.
Well, this is why we see so many members of the gay community outraged by the abuse of the system by the trans community. We're seeing that conflict within the LGBTQ groups themselves at the moment. Anyway, Sal Grover spoke to former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson on his podcast this week. Let's just have a listen to a bit of that.
Once upon a time, we didn't know that the Earth was round, but we still knew male and female. It was the most basic fact that we've always known. That's how terrifying it is that we're now in a time where people are actually saying we don't know that. There are people every day in this country going to their jobs, knowing that the men in their office are going to be using their bathroom. They're very uncomfortable. Again, I get messages every day about it. Or if they say the wrong thing, they can be punished by their HR departments. They could lose their job. I know why the ABC won't cover this issue. It's because they don't want their audience to know the reality of it. Feels like they're trying to make an example out of you, saying to everybody else, don't you stick your head up.
Oh, I'm sure they.
Yeah.
The process is the punishment.
I've spent 3 years now watching the Sex Discrimination Commission and being like, I just don't know how this works. If you don't know what sex is, well, then why are you here? This is a really serious court case that impacts everybody, because if we don't have these rights to truth and reality, we have nothing.
Sal Grover speaking to former Deputy Prime Minister John Anderson, his podcast this week, worth checking out after the show online. Even the lesbians are not happy, Ruben. The Lesbian Action Group was granted intervener status in the case, adding more voices to the debate. They're concerned about the implications for women's only spaces as well. Sal Grover's talking about leaving Australia, saying she's going to take the business abroad. The business has suffered enormously. It's a whole other side of this, which is truly tragic. Somebody trying to do a startup and get a business going, and they just get squashed by our ridiculous regulations in this country. Global awareness of what we're doing. It's got to be. It can't possibly be playing well around the world, can it? What's the vibe you get from abroad and other free speech unions when you talk to them about this?
Well, I mean, it makes Australia a laughingstock. I mean, the one relief is how incompetent some of these people are, because it is doing a great job of illustrating how ridiculous all this is. And that includes the eSAFETY Commissioner. That includes our so-called Sex Discrimination Commissioner, I think, who's misunderstood her job title, which isn't to discriminate against women. I hadn't quite realised that's what she thought her job title was, but there you go. But it is, at least they are making themselves look like clowns, and hopefully it is going to cause continued international outrage. But it is really troubling that these people have got nothing better to do on, I don't think it's $500,000 a year they get of our money to produce this nonsense, plus all the amount of money they spend on lawyers and all the other activities they engage in. I mean, find something better to do. Go and find something productive to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, what really bugs me is the lack of media coverage on this. I mean, the Australian covered it, Sky News covered it, we've covered it. Even the left-wing Guardian newspaper, because they're obsessed with identity politics, of course, they covered it. But nothing apparently on the ABC. It was almost zero. Sydney Morning Herald, zero. Age, not there. I mean, it's like they're deliberately too afraid to go there, or they're just ideologically choosing not to go there, possibly. But just amazes me. Even the federal court understood the significance of the case. Last year, they live streamed it on YouTube. So it's just, it's amazing. But there's so many people saying online, that Sal Grover's speaking for them and speaking, one woman wrote, you speak for all of us who are still afraid to speak out. Thank you so much for standing up for women. I wish I could put my name to this. However, it would impact my employment. Many of us are too scared to speak up in case we're cancelled or lose our jobs. And we live in a period of human history where the thoughtful and the intelligent must stay silent for fear of offending the fragile and the stupid. Those quotes in a good piece in The Australian critiquing this really do speak to the fact that, I mean, that's the thing about free speech, isn't it, Ruben? People start to self-censor if they're afraid, and then the baddies have already won.
Well, I mean, do you want a society based on facts, or do you want it based on fiction? I mean, the Soviet society was based on fiction, right? Various fictions that were set up to basically pretend that everything was working well. This is a different set of fictions, but you are required to comply with them. And it's now reached the point where certain newspapers and outlets apparently find biological facts too difficult to talk about. I mean, maybe they all failed biology at school. Maybe that explains the ABC and the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age struggling to cover it. They can't find someone who understands like basic biology or basic facts. You know, that might be their issue they're having. Who knows? But I mean, you should be able to point out a fact, and it's like, even though it's really upsetting, it doesn't matter what that fact is, right? This might be one particular moral outrage being confected, but there's all sorts of different facts out there, scientific facts that you know, that everyone should be able to speak freely about. Otherwise, how do you know when you go to the hospital that the doctor's actually telling the truth?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the whole thing. It doesn't matter what your view is on trans issues, but you know, biology is biology, and you know, I might choose to call Roxanne Tickle a woman. I might choose to use her and she pronouns if I choose to, but we can't force people to do that. That's the problem. You're going that one step further, which is just too much. As Jordan Peterson said all those years ago, when Canada tried to introduce that C16 thing in Toronto, in Ontario. Anyway, all right. Enough of that. We better move on. Ruben, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for your time. And if people want to get into the Free Speech Union, your website, just quickly.
Yes, freespeechunion.au.
Okay.
Thanks for having us along. I'm sure we'll be talking more soon.
Absolutely hope so. Yeah, good to have you back. Keep us in touch on how things are going. That's Ruben Kirkham from the Free Speech Union of Australia. And that's all for this episode of The Other Side, your analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke. We will see you next Friday night, and clips from this show will be dropping throughout the week as usual on our YouTube and Rumble channels. If you like to watch in that shorter format, or you want to send segments to friends, please do switch on the subscribe, hit that subscribe button, switch on the bell, also the notification bell, so that you do get notified when the content drops, and that helps to make sure that we keep appearing in your YouTube catalog and home screen and things like that. Please tell your friends if you like what we do. That is the best way to support us, but we also do need your financial support to continue. We are a voluntarily viewer-supported show. There are now two ways that you can support us financially. One's to go to our website at othersidetv.com.au and sign up to the exclusive side for less than $5 a month. Or you can now subscribe right on YouTube, if that's where you watch, by simply pressing the join button beside the subscribe button down below. It's that easy. The QR code at the bottom of the screen will take you to our website to sign up. Then YouTube doesn't take a cut, but it's your call. I'm Damien Curry. Bye for now.
The Other Side with Damien Curry is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month.